Hello friends, how are you doing today? In this video, we are going to talk in detail about the enterprise architecture patterns. So in the last video, you might have seen about enterprise architecture pattern, cloud architecture pattern, and cloud design pattern, right? As I mentioned in the last video, we are going to take each category, the enterprise architecture pattern, cloud architecture pattern, and cloud design pattern, and explore what are all the actual enterprise patterns available in each category. Okay, so I'm going to start with the enterprise architecture pattern. Under this enterprise architecture pattern category, there are plenty of enterprise architecture patterns available, and one of the examples is layered architecture pattern. Similarly, we have SOA architecture pattern, microservice architecture pattern. These are all the patterns available. I will start with one architecture pattern in this video, that is layered architecture pattern. So when it comes to layered architecture pattern, as the name mentions, you can see the architecture looks like layers. So the top layer, middle layer, and bottom layer, all those layers will be defining your architecture pattern. So when it comes to layered architecture pattern, it is not going to be same for all organization. One scale doesn't fit for all these organizations. So basically, if you take an example of banking domain, their layered architecture pattern will be totally different. And if you take an example of retail companies, their layered architecture pattern will be different. Okay, so since this is a part of enterprise architecture pattern, what are all those layers will be? First, the first layer will be the business architecture layer. Okay, or business layer you can call it as. And the second layer is information and system, and the bottom layer is technology layer. So in the business layer, you define the business architecture, business requirement, and how do you create the business architecture, what are all those components related to the business architecture. So that will be in the business layer. And when it comes to this second layer, information and systems layer, you define about the data and application. What are all the components needed for developing application? What are all the data components? How do you modernize your data and application? And what are all the services required for doing this work? So all those will be defined in the information and system layer. And the bottom layer is technology layer. In the technology layer, you cover the platform and infrastructure. The bottom layer is the infrastructure layer. On top of that, there will be platform layer. So you define what are all the components needed for your enterprises to work, or your enterprise application to work in the infrastructure layer. And on top of that, you will have platform layer, and you create all the platform components on the platform layer. And on top of that platform layer, you will have this information and system layer, wherein you define or create all the applications and data. On top of that, there will be business layer, mostly your business requirements, business needs, and all the customer facing applications will be sitting on those on that layer. Okay, so this is called layered architecture pattern. The layered architecture pattern is one of the enterprise architecture patterns most widely used in all the enterprises. As I mentioned, there is no one scale fits all. It's going to be unique for each domain. Domain, I mean in the industry. If you take telecom industry, there will be a dedicated enterprise architecture pattern under which the layered architecture pattern will be specific to the telecom industry. Similarly for other industries too. So this is one way of looking the layered architecture pattern, which is coming under the category enterprise architecture pattern. Okay, so you can look this layered architecture pattern in other ways too. So for example, if you take your enterprise, and if you are focusing only on the application, so when you develop application, what are all the layers needed? Basically, you will have the presentation layer, and next will be a service layer, and next will be business logic layer. Under that, there will be a service layer to talk to the data access layer, and the data access layer will connect to the database layer, and the database layer will be sitting on a platform, and the platform will sit on an infrastructure layer. And also, if you look at the side, there will be the batch job layer. Sometimes if you're an organization where you need to query the offline data very often, you may need to create a batch job layer that will talk to each layer and pull in the data from each area. So for example, if you want to query the database frequently and pull the data from the database, you may need to write a the batch job, and that will do the work of pulling the data from the database, right? And similarly, you can just feed in the data to some other applications periodically. Then you may write a batch job. So for all the batch jobs, you may have a batch job layer that will cover the business logic layer, and it will cover the services layer, data access layer, and database layer. And if you look at the side, there will be a dedicated layer that is going to cover all these layers, that is called security layer. So when it comes to security, the security is not going to be implemented only the business logic layer or data access layer. It has to be implemented across all the layers. So when you create your UI layer, you may focus on what type of security component need to be implemented, what type of security technology need to be implemented, all those stuff. And again, when it comes to the business logic layer, you must focus and understand what type of security mechanism needed to be implemented, so that your application will be so secure. So, and also, like when it comes to the data access layer, you have to focus on the security aspect. And this is how the application component as a bundle will look like in an enterprise. And this is also called layered architecture pattern. So in the first scenario, we talked about the broader category, where how an industry adopt this layered architecture pattern, right? In the second explanation, what we saw about is, if you are an enterprise and if you want to adopt this layered architecture pattern, and what are all the components involved in this layer architecture pattern, and how it can be adopted well in your enterprise specific to the application. When it comes to the application, I just focused on the major components in that application is presentation layer, service layer, business logic layer, data access layer, persistent layer, and database layer. And the entire component will sit on a platform under which you will have a end processor to run entire setup, right? So this is about layered architecture pattern, okay? And if you are a solution architect and if you are a cloud architect, you must know about this layered architecture pattern and understand how this works, so that you can advise the different teams like a business team, application team, and data team, and technology team, technology architect. So all those guys will get the detail about how this layered architecture will look like and how you can adopt and get benefit out of it. So this is quite common. You might have implemented for some of your projects in your organization, and you might have heard about this well. Just to summarize, the enterprise architecture patterns are the broad category under which we will have this different types of architecture patterns. First one is a layered architecture pattern. We took that and explained with the example here. And in upcoming video, we are going to see about the next enterprise architecture pattern in the enterprise architecture category. Okay. Hope you like this video. If you like this video, give a thumbs up and share it to your friends so that they will also get benefit out of it. Take care. Bye.